Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we have a great listening session ready for you. Before we dive into the story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us create more content for you. Ready? Let's get started. The City Behind the Shadows. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Watched the Rain. The rain had been falling for 3 days without stopping. Not the kind of rain that arrived dramatically with thunder and lightning, but the quiet kind, the kind that slowly entered your thoughts and stayed there. The streets of London looked washed and colorless beneath the gray sky. Cars moved carefully through the wet roads, while exhausted people hurried under black umbrellas, avoiding eye contact with strangers as if everyone carried invisible wounds. Elias Hart stood near the window of a small cafe in Camden Town, watching the rain slide down the glass. He was 24 years old, though the dark circles under his eyes made him look older. A cold cup of coffee rested untouched in front of him. The cafe smelled of burnt sugar and wet coats. Soft jazz played somewhere in the background, but Elias barely heard it. He was thinking about the letter that had arrived that morning without a sender's name. The envelope had been perfectly white, almost unnaturally clean compared to the old mailbox in his apartment building. Inside, there was only a single sentence written in dark ink. Some memories are buried because they should never be found. No signature. No explanation. Only those words. A T first. Elias thought it was a joke. Maybe one of his old university friends trying to be mysterious. But the moment he touched the paper, something strange happened. A memory returned. Not completely, just a fragment. A woman screaming, a corridor filled with red light, and a door slowly closing. Elias pressed his fingers against his forehead. For years, his childhood had existed like a book with missing pages. He remembered almost nothing before the age of 11. Therapists called it trauma-related memory loss. Doctors said the brain sometimes erased painful experiences to protect itself, but Elias had never truly believed them, because deep inside him, there had always been a feeling that something terrible had happened, and, worse, that someone had hidden the truth from him. The cafe door opened violently. As cold wind rushed inside, a tall man entered wearing a charcoal coat. Water dripped from his sleeves onto the floor. He looked around the cafe once before his eyes landed directly on Elias. The stranger walked toward him calmly. "You received the letter," the man said. It was not a question. Elias straightened immediately. "Who are you?" The man ignored the question and sat across from him. Up close, he looked around. 50 years old, sharp cheekbones, pale skin, gray eyes that seemed disturbingly empty. "You shouldn't investigate your past," he said quietly. Elias stared at him. "Excuse me?" The people who forgot the truth survived because they forgot. A silence settled between them. Outside, rain hit the windows harder. Elias tried to remain calm. "Did you send the letter?" "No." "Then how do you know about it?" The man leaned slightly forward. "Because the same letter was sent to 6 others." Elias felt his heart beat slow and naturally. "What others?" The stranger looked toward the rainy street before answering. "All of them are dead now." For several seconds, Elias could not speak. The cafe suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. "What kind of sick joke is this?" The man stood slowly. "This is not a joke, Mr. Hart." Before leaving, he placed a small silver key onto the table. "There is a storage room beneath Blackthorn Station. Locker 117. Go there if you truly want answers." Elias looked at the key. When he raised his eyes again, the man was already walking into the rain and disappearing. Chapter 2. Locker 117. Blackthorn Station had been abandoned for nearly 20 years. Most Londoners did not even remember it existed. Hidden beneath newer underground lines, the station had become one of those forgotten places swallowed by time and bureaucracy. Newspapers once claimed structural damage forced its closure, but conspiracy theories continued. For years afterward, some said people disappeared there. Others claimed strange sounds could still be heard beneath the tunnels at night. Elias never believed stories like that. At least not before tonight. The station entrance stood behind a row of neglected buildings covered in graffiti. Rust covered the locked metal gates. Rainwater dripped from broken concrete above him, while distant thunder echoed across the city. He looked down at the silver key in his hand. Every logical part of his mind told him to leave. Instead, he climbed over the gate. The underground air smelled ancient dust, metal, mold, and something else beneath it all. Something burnt, Elias turned on the flashlight from his phone. The old escalators no longer worked. He walked downward carefully, each step echoing into darkness. The station below looked frozen in time. Faded advertisements peeled from the walls. Old newspapers covered the floor. A clock above the platform still displayed 11:47 despite being dead for decades. And yet someone had been there recently, fresh. Footprints crossed the dust. Elias froze. The footprints disappeared into a narrow hallway near the eastern tunnel. His breathing slowed. He should leave, right now. But then he saw it. A small metal door. Locker 117. His hands trembled slightly as he inserted the key. The lock clicked open immediately. Inside the locker sat 3 objects: a cassette tape, a photograph, and another envelope. Elias picked up the photograph. First, the image showed 7 children standing together in front of a large building surrounded by trees. The picture quality was old, faded at the corners. One of the children was Elias, younger, maybe 10 years old. His chest tightened, because every child in the photograph had their eyes crossed out with black ink, except him. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "You were the only one who escaped." Elias dropped the picture. Suddenly a sound echoed through the tunnel behind him. Footsteps, slow, heavy, coming closer. Elias turned off his flashlight instinctively. Darkness swallowed the station. The footsteps continued, closer, closer. Then, silence, complete silence. Elias could hear only his own breathing now. He reached slowly for the cassette tape and a voice emerged from the darkness behind him. "You were not supposed to come back." Chapter 3: The Voice in the Dark. Elias spun around violently. A figure stood at the edge of the hallway, barely visible in the darkness, tall, motionless, watching him. For one terrifying second, Elias could not move. Fear locked every muscle in his body, while his mind desperately tried to understand what he was seeing. The figure stepped forward slowly. An old woman. Her silver hair hung over one side of her face, and her long black coat looked almost theatrical beneath the weak emergency lights. But it was her eyes that unsettled him most. She looked at him as though she had known him for years. "You shouldn't have opened that locker," she said quietly. Elias forced himself to speak. "Who are you?" "My name no longer matters." "That's not an answer." "No," she admitted calmly. "But it is the truth." She glanced toward the photograph lying on the ground. "They finally found you." Elias swallowed hard. "Who found me?" The woman hesitated. Then she whispered 2 words. "The 9th circle." The name meant nothing to Elias, yet somehow it still filled him with dread. The old woman walked closer. "You need to listen carefully, Elias. Very carefully. Because after tonight, they will begin watching you again." "Who are they?" "The people who erased your memories." The world suddenly felt unreal. Elias laughed nervously, though there was no humor in it. "You expect me to believe some secret organization erased my childhood memories?" The woman stared directly into his eyes. "I expect you to remember." Silence. Then she pointed toward the cassette tape still inside the locker. "Play it."
The Last Train to Winter Hollow. Chapter 1: The Station Without a Clock. At exactly 11:13 p.m., Amelia Reed stepped off the train into a town that did not appear on any map. The cold hit her immediately. Not ordinary winter cold. This felt older somehow. A freezing silence that crept beneath skin and bone. Snow drifted slowly through the air, covering the empty station platform in white. Above her, the station sign read, Winter Hollow. Letters were faded and cracked. Amelia frowned. She was certain this was not where she was supposed to be. Just an hour earlier, she had boarded a crowded train in Edinburgh after finishing a 16-hour hospital shift. She remembered exhausted passengers, glowing phone screens, the smell of coffee and wet wool coats. Then she fell asleep, and now the train behind her was empty, completely empty. No conductor, no passengers, no sound. Even stranger, the train itself looked wrong now, older, rusted at the edges. The dark green paint seemed decades out of date. A sudden metallic screech shattered the silence. Amelia jumped as the train doors slammed shut behind her. Wait! The engine roared. Within seconds, the train disappeared into the snowy darkness, leaving her alone. The station lights flickered weakly overhead. Amelia pulled out her phone. No signal. 1. Then the screen died. Perfect, she muttered. Wind howled through the station tunnels like distant voices. She adjusted the strap of her bag and began walking toward the station exit. Every instinct told her something was wrong, not dangerous. Exactly. Worse. Unnatural. Inside the station, Winter Hollow looked frozen in another century. The streets were lined with old brick buildings, glowing dimly beneath amber street lamps. Snow-covered abandoned cars that looked decades old. Storefront windows displayed dusty mannequins dressed in outdated fashion, and yet lights burned inside several buildings. Someone lived here, somewhere nearby. Church bells rang midnight. Amelia checked her watch. Immediately, 11:13 p.m. Still, her watch had stopped. A figure appeared at the end of the street, a young boy, maybe 12 years old. He stood beneath a street lamp, staring directly at her. "Excuse me," Amelia called. "Can you tell me where I am?" The boy did not answer. Instead, he asked softly, "You came on the last train, didn't you?" Amelia hesitated. "Yes." The boy's face paled instantly. "You shouldn't have." Before Amelia could respond, he turned and ran into the snow. "Wait." She followed him down the empty street, but after turning the corner, the boy was gone. Only footprints remained in the snow. Footprints that stopped suddenly in the middle of the road, as if whoever made them had simply vanished. Chapter 2. The hotel with no guests. The only building still open was a small hotel near the center of town. The Aurora Inn. A golden light glowed behind frosted windows, while an old jazz song played faintly. Inside, Amelia pushed open the heavy wooden door. Warmth surrounded her instantly. The lobby smelled of cinnamon, firewood, and old books. A man stood behind the reception desk, polishing a glass. He looked around. 60 years old, wearing a dark red vest and silver glasses. But unlike normal people, he showed absolutely no surprise at seeing her. "You arrived later than expected," he said calmly. Amelia blinked. "Expected?" The man smiled faintly. "Winter storms delay the train sometimes." Something about his tone unsettled her. "How do you know about the train?" "The same way everyone here does." He placed a brass room key onto the counter. "Room 203. I didn't ask for a room." "You will." Amelia stared at him carefully. "Look, I think there's been some misunderstanding. I just need directions to the nearest highway or bus station." The man stopped polishing the glass. Then he said quietly, "There are no roads leaving Winter Hollow after midnight." A silence followed. Amelia laughed nervously. "Okay, that's not funny. I am not joking." The fire crackled softly nearby. The old man leaned closer. "You should stay indoors tonight, Miss Reed." "How do you know my name?" For the first time, the man's expression darkened. "Because everyone who arrives here already belongs to the town." The lobby suddenly felt colder. Amelia slowly stepped backward. "What does that mean?" The old man looked toward the window, sighed. Snow continued falling heavily. Then he whispered, "It means Winter Hollow only appears for people who are about to die." Chapter 3. The names beneath the ice. Amelia did not sleep. She locked the hotel room door twice and sat awake beside the window while snow buried the town deeper in silence. The clock beside the bed displayed the same frozen time all night. 11:13 p.m. Never changing. Every few hours she thought about leaving the hotel and searching for help. But something outside disturbed her. The streets were never completely empty. People walked there sometimes, tall figures moving slowly through the snow. None of them carried lanterns, none left footprints, and none ever looked human for long. Around what should have been dawn, Amelia finally left her room. The hotel corridor was silent. Too silent, even the wooden floorboards made no sound beneath her feet. Downstairs, the receptionist was gone. In his place sat an old leather book opened across the front desk. Amelia approached carefully. The pages contain hundreds of names, dates beside each one, some recent, some over a century old. Her stomach tightened when she saw the final entry. Amelia Reed, December 14, today's date. Beneath her name was a sentence written in dark ink. Arrived by the last train. A floorboard creaked behind her. Amelia turned sharply. A woman stood at the end of the lobby, tall, pale, wearing a long black coat dusted with snow. Her dark eyes looked exhausted. Ancient. You saw the book, the woman said softly. Amelia's voice shook slightly. What is this place? The woman walked slowly closer. A town between moments. That doesn't mean anything. It will. The woman looked toward the frozen windows. Everyone here was given a second chance once. Amelia frowned. A second chance for what? The woman's expression filled with sadness. To decide whether they truly wanted to live. Outside, somewhere deep in the fog-covered streets, a train whistle echoed. Long, cold, and impossibly far away. The woman closed her eyes immediately. They're coming early tonight. Who's coming? The woman whispered only two words. The passengers. Then every light inside the hotel went out at once.